everybody. Happy Monday. So, we hope you guys had a great weekend. And I don't know about you, Stephanie, but one of the things I did this weekend was listen to Joe Rogan's interview with Trump. And of course, it went viral. And you can tell me if I'm lowballing this because I know you're on social media a lot more than I am. But the last numbers that I saw, Newsweek posted this yesterday that the episode has had over 26 million views. And it's the most viewed podcast appearance for either candidate during this election campaign.
Yeah, I don't know what the number is now, but they said like within 24 hours, it was Joe Rogan's fourth most downloaded and listened to episode. And that was just in the first 24 hours. So who knows where it's at now?
Yeah, and like obviously it hasn't gone as viral as Trump's interview with Elon Musk because Yahoo said that that's had around 95 million views, but it's definitely one of the most watched interviews from this election campaign. And like you said, it's one of the highest viewed podcasts in the history of the Joe Rogan experience. And, overall, I thought it was a good interview, but there was nothing like shocking or unexpected. And I listened to the whole thing at once. We were driving to Poland on Saturday morning, and it was like perfectly timed for the amount of time that it took the drive. And I felt like I was just listening to this like a chill conversation. It wasn't like one of Trump's speeches or rallies, and it was just a cool conversation. And I know that that's basically like the tone of how Rogan does his podcasts, but I think I was just like pleasantly surprised because Trump sounded so just genuine and mellow and easygoing. And there were so many parts of it that were cool, but I think the thing that I liked the most was when they were talking about Trump's initial experience when he first got into politics as a non-politician and how he ended up trusting some of the wrong people and what he would do differently this time around. And his answers were just like very human and like basically admitting that he didn't know everything and he made some poor decisions. And hearing him talk about that was really cool, like the awe and wonder that he had of being in the White House and the Lincoln bedroom, and like you could hear his passion for his love of our country and our history, and it wasn't just like a bunch of rhetoric and campaign talk. And I felt like I was listening to my dad just like tell stories and talk about cool shit. Like, what did you think?
Yeah, well, so it was 3 hours long, and like I had my headphones in, I was just listening as I was going throughout my day. And like when they had to wrap it up, I was like, wait, it's over? Like, I don't want it to be over because it was just, I felt like it really showed a likable side of Trump that people never get to see. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that have never seen that side of him that are going to see it now with that interview. I was expecting something earth-shattering, like maybe he's going to reveal something big, and it really wasn't anything we haven't already heard, but like I agree with you. I think it was intentional. It's like that's first of all, that's how Rogan's podcast is. But I think that maybe they just wanted to show that he's like a real human being. He's just a person. And I thought if that was the goal, he did a great job with that. That coupled with him working at McDonald's, it just showed this side of Trump that the news never shows. And I really think it helps him a lot. And one of the things that as he was talking about, I was like, yes, yes. When he was like getting into replacing the income tax with tariffs. And like he went into detail explaining how he started doing this when he was president before and how he'll do it again. And it was very interesting and stuff like you talked about. He mentioned his love of history. Like that guy he knows everything about history. He was talking about how, the income tax wasn't really in our country. They were using tariffs until the late 1800s. And then Rogan like flat out asked him, hey, you had mentioned or we heard that you were floating this idea of like removing income tax. And he asked him, is that something you're serious about or is that just an idea? And that's what I've been wondering this whole time. And Trump was like, no, we are serious about it. And here's how I'm going to do it. And so he was saying that like the tariffs that he had in place when he was president, they were bringing so much money in that the country had never had before from all these, other countries that it would start to actually decrease our deficit, But then, right as they got to that point, that's when COVID hit. So obviously, like everything, went crazy and we had to use money for COVID. But I loved that he used specific examples. So he brought up like Apple and he was saying how they'll make money overseas, but then they keep the money overseas because if they were to bring that money here in the United States, they'd be taxed around 50%, which is like insane. You talk about taxing the rich, like that is literally like how much they would be taxed at that level. And so he explained how his whole tax plan of cutting taxes for corporations, it helps everyone here. It helps the country because then these businesses bring their money and spend their money in the US when they're not doing that now because of taxation. And like I'm doing a horrible job of explaining it. So like obviously everyone should listen to the interview, but I mean, I thought he very thoroughly explained it in a way that was very easy for everyone to understand of like why that's a genius idea. And it was done like that was what our country was up until they changed it and started taxing American citizens on their income. So, when he did the debate, like you and I were both like, man, I wish that he would have done that during the debate, gone into it, explained it more. And so I'm glad he did that now because I feel like more people are going to see this than the debate. Um, and then he used like that whole thing with Apple is like the perfect example of why this whole tax the rich bullshit that the Democrats always talk about never benefits Americans. He's like, it never benefits. He's like, I want to cut taxes, she wants to increase it. And that is why it always trickles down and hurts the middle class Americans when they try to tax these corporations. And I just thought he beautifully explained it. And then it's like, they were talking about UFC fighting, they were talking about aliens, like they went over literally everything you could think of. And what struck me is it just seemed like they could talk forever with no problem. It just flowed so well. And all I could think about the whole time was like, there is no way in hell that Kamala could ever handle a 3-hour interview, especially with someone like Joe Rogan, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah, Trump even made a hilarious comment about how she wouldn't be able to hack it and he said like she'd be laying on the floor or something. And even Rogan himself commented on this. He did a podcast with some other guests and they were talking about this episode with Trump and he commented how Trump was totally authentic and funny, called him a natural comedian. And he basically said he was surprised that Trump just kept going and maintained focus for 3 hours. And like he didn't even pee before the podcast. He didn't get up to pee during the podcast. He didn't pee when he left. Like he said he was shocked. Trump just kept going and like it was crazy. And like Rogan isn't endorsing Trump like officially in any way. But I think it's obvious that he agrees with a lot of Trump's policies. But again, he's not officially endorsing him. And he made it very clear that he wants to do a similar interview with Kamala, and she just doesn't have the time. So I want to play this clip from MSNBC um, explaining this. Well, if I can find the clip, hang on. Here we go.
Can I ask you about Rogan? Was there a Rogan invite to the vice president that was turned down? Is it something you would consider doing, given the size of that audience, and given that a lot of the folks that Trump seems to be targeting might be listening to that? Well, yeah, I think that the vice president's happy to go anywhere and any place to talk to a broad segment of the country. We talked with Rogan and his team about the podcast. Unfortunately, it isn't going to work out right now because of the scheduling of this period of the campaign.
Okay, it isn't gonna work out right now. Stephanie, Joe Rogan has one of the most popular podcasts, not just in America, but in the fucking world. He has like 14.5 million followers on Spotify, over 17.5 million subscribers on YouTube. And Kamala doesn't have the time to interview him or interview with him during a presidential campaign when we're less than 2 weeks away from voting and she's struggling to get votes. Like, is anyone fucking buying this? And by the way, she had plenty of time to go out for drinks with fucking useless Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer on Saturday. And I don't know if you saw this, but she was caught on a hot mic talking about how she's struggling to get male voters, especially like Black and Latino male voters. And like she was totally caught off guard and didn't know what to say when she realized it was being recorded. And so, of course, she just laughed. But Joe Rogan's podcast is wildly popular with fucking men. So why wouldn't she jump at the chance to be a guest on the show, especially if she's trying to attract male voters? It's because she's fucking scared. And like Trump isn't. We've seen Trump interview with basically anyone and everyone, regardless of their political views. We know he says some really stupid shit sometimes. Maybe he exaggerates with his stories. He gets stuff wrong. But you know what? He puts himself out there repeatedly to get ripped apart, destroyed by the leftist media. And instead of hiding, he keeps coming back for more. The man has had 2 fucking assassination attempts on his life, and yet he continues to go out into the public and interact with people. And he puts himself in danger, knowing that the left and the elites want him dead. And they continue to say as much. And he still doesn't fucking give up. He is strong and capable and fearless, and he has the track record to prove that he can fix what's broken in this country. And it's not that Kamala doesn't have time to go on Joe Rogan's podcast. It's because she's fucking scared. She has been so careful and selective with who she talks to. And even with, the Democrat friendly outlets like CNN, she can't hack it. Like, we've seen her interviews. She won't go on Rogan because she's scared as fuck of getting asked hard questions or even like basic questions that she doesn't have answers to. And I'm sorry, but the sad, pathetic excuse that she gave to CNN last week about how she's just a nerd and she needs to research things before answering questions, like, that is such bullshit. She doesn't have the fucking answers because she doesn't have the ability to think independently. She has no fucking common sense. She has no valid policies for strengthening our country because she knows that she's spent the past 4 years contributing to its decline and essentially being complicit in multiple forms of treason. So no matter how much she wants to try and distance herself from Biden and his policies, they aren't Biden's policies. They are Biden-Harris policies that she has been a part of and supported for the past 4 years. And she's even been the tie-breaking decision maker on one of the worst policies in American history. So the fact that she's trying to distance herself from Biden and he's nowhere to be seen on the campaign trail with her, to me, that just points out how completely inauthentic and fraudulent she is. And suddenly, Biden's a liability when she's been by his side lying for him for the past 4 years. It's fucking fake and it's disgusting. And I know people are starting to see through it. And I hope enough people are able to do this because the bottom line is she's scared to go on Rogan's podcast because he's not going to throw softball questions at her. He's not going to be the person who will only ask, the pre-approved questions that she has rehearsed answers to. And on top of that, like, his podcasts are at a minimum of 2 hours each. Like, there's no fucking way that she can talk for that long without a script. Why? Because she's not fucking capable and everybody knows it. And frankly, the only way she will win the election, the only way in hell is if it's stolen, like, again.
Yeah. And I forget who I was listening to. It was some commentator, but they were saying, what do campaigns use the money for? They use it to reach more people. You have an opportunity to go on the biggest podcast and reach the most people, and you say no. But it's like, because she, like you said, she has nothing to stand on. Her history is a mess. Her policies are not defined, and everything she's saying now completely contradicts everything she's done throughout her career. And yeah, like, she knows, like, look at how Rogan was with Trump. There were many times throughout the conversation where he was like, you're getting out of left field, or like, you're starting to, and he was like, no, I'm getting back to that. I just want to tell this story first. Like, Trump can weave, and they even talked about how he can like weave the conversation. And so he's not going to let her get away with the bullshit answers that she's given at every single interview that they've had so far. And it's like, my whole thing is, imagine this is a job interview, because it is. I mean,
Yeah.
if
Or
she
should be.
go and talk to Joe Rogan, a comedian, UFC guy. How the hell is she going to talk with world leaders? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's like this should terrify everyone that she can't even go and have an easygoing conversation on a podcast, but then she wants to lead the war in Israel and Gaza and Ukraine and like all of this stuff that's breaking out all over the world. She will not be able to handle it.
No, but that's why they're all in support of her because she'll be easy to control because she
Yeah.
doesn't have any independent thoughts of her own and they can basically tell her what to do. And it's just like, I don't understand at this point how anybody is supporting her. And another thing I want to bring up is like one of the things that Trump and Rogan talked about was election fraud and like Trump's claim that the 2020 election was stolen from him. And Rogan pushed him on it. Like he asked Trump like, "Okay, I want you to elaborate on why you think this because I think he said something like every time you bring up this topic, nobody gives you an opportunity to really answer. And so I want to know, like, why do you feel that way?" And, of course, it was the obvious Russia collusion hoax with the Hunter Biden laptop that we already know was a deciding factor for a lot of voters who've come out and said they would have voted differently if they had known it was true. But one of the things that Trump brought up was the mail-in ballot issue. And he said that like we're the only country that still allows mail-in ballots. And I know they don't allow them here in the Czech Republic, but I wanted to know if he was correct. So I looked it up and I swear I thought this would be like super easy to find. Like go into Google and type in which countries allow mail-in voting. It was so fucking hard to find information. And the most current thing I saw was information from 2022 on a website called witf.org that's associated or affiliated with the Associated Press. And this website claimed that there are 9 countries that allow mail-in voting: Canada, Germany, Iceland, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Poland, South Korea, Switzerland, and the UK. So maybe that wasn't an entirely accurate statement on Trump's part, but I do think there is definitely evidence that mail-in balloting makes election interference a lot easier. And this is one of the things that he talked about. And so we have the left, like, especially after this interview, I've seen so many articles in the MSM talking about how Trump's pushing election interference as a conspiracy theory. And we fucking seen it. We saw it in the last election. We've talked already about how it's happening now. But the Washington Post just published a report over the weekend claiming that more than 230 Republicans that are currently running for office are part of what they're calling a disinformation campaign as a pervasive effort within the GOP to undermine public trust in the vote ahead of November 5th. And the article talks about how Republicans are spreading misinformation about Kamala replacing Biden as the unelected Democrat candidate. And they're saying, no, it was legitimate because she was already on the Democratic ticket alongside Biden during the primaries. But it's like, yeah, as the fucking VP, not as the presidential candidate, right? It's two totally different things. And we are seeing evidence of election interference with early voting and mail-in ballots. We talked about this on Friday with the 450,000 people who somehow registered to vote in Texas without having valid ID, and how the Biden-Harris admin is basically refusing to verify whether or not they're citizens. Over the weekend in Iowa, voter records are showing that thousands of non-citizens have registered to vote. There was an audit conducted by the Iowa Attorney General, and it was found that 87 non-citizens have already voted and then self-reported after the fact that they weren't citizens. They reported it during the audit process. Over 2,000 non-citizens self-reported they weren't citizens beforehand and still voted or registered to vote. In Virginia, a Biden-appointed federal judge ordered the reinstatement of voter registrations for more than 1,600 residents who are not U.S. citizens because of some fucking weird federal rule that you can't like take away the voting rights within 60 days of the election, which makes no sense because they shouldn't
Illegal.
have. Yes, exactly. They shouldn't have voting rights in the first place. In Oak Harbor, Washington, Multiple ballots were found on the roadside by a man driving to work. In Phoenix, Arizona, at least 20 ballots were destroyed in an intentional fire set to a USPS mailbox. And these may seem like small things, but they're fucking happening everywhere. And just like you mentioned the other day, Stephanie, the quote experts are already saying that it's more than likely we won't know the election results on November 5th, and it may take days or weeks or even longer for the ballots to be counted, which I think is fucking ridiculous. And that's one of the things that Trump was talking about with Joe Rogan, was how, back in the day before mail-in balloting, everyone went to the polls, you voted, they tallied it up. You knew by that night what the result was. I remember this from voting in past elections. Like, it shouldn't be this fucking difficult, that there's so much fraud going on that it takes weeks to fucking count ballots.
Yeah, they talk about, the people not having trust in the process. Well, that's why when you're waiting and at 2 a.m., all of a sudden everything shifts. Like, of course, people are going to question the system. And, he also brought up during the Rogan interview that there were never mail-in ballots like this prior to COVID. They used COVID as their excuse to get like every state on board with mail-in ballots. That wasn't the case before. And so they were totally like setting it up for all sorts of fraudulent activity. And perfect instance of this is potential fraud in Pennsylvania with 2,500 fraudulent voter registrations. And so this was so bad that they did a press conference in Lancaster County, and I'm going to play a little clip of that.
Lancaster County detectives began investigating the voter registration applications and immediately found applications that were indeed fraudulent. Indicators of fraud included inaccuracies with the addresses listed on the applications, false personal identification information, as well as false names. A number of the applications also contained names that did not match the provided Social Security information. In some cases, applications contained correct personal identification information, such as the correct address, correct phone number, date of birth, driver's license number, and Social Security number. But the individuals listed on the applications informed detectives that they did not request the form, they did not complete the form, and verified that the signature on the form was not theirs. At this point, it is believed that the fraudulent voter registrations are connected to a large-scale canvassing operations for voter registrations that date back to June.
So basically, what brought this to light was they get, these 2,500 applications to register to vote, and the handwriting was the same. So it's like someone's going out trying to get people to register to vote, and they're just filling all this information in. It's just like crazy. And that's just one county. This is 2,500 in one county in our country. The only thing that gives me hope is the fact that not only are they catching this ahead of time, but they're doing a public press conference about it, which makes it seem like they're taking this seriously and kind of like warning people, you're not going to get away with election fraud. I think that's better than what they did last time around. So at least it gives me a little hope, but I mean, who knows how bad this is across the country.
Yeah, and it's multifaceted, because it's not just, election interference with ballots. Like, my husband sent me an article this morning from the Gateway Hispanic. I'm guessing that that's like affiliated with the Gateway Pundit, but it was an article about how YouTube decided to shut down their channel without any prior notice or any of those, the usual like warning violations they give. And the channel is claiming it's election interference because they were getting thousands and thousands of views and likes on posts where they were exposing some of the false claims being made by the MSM about the election. And they were basically like fact checking the fact checkers. And this information, it's like all information that's being put out to the Hispanic community, but then they get shut down 11 days before the election with no warnings. Like, that sounds like election interference to me. And you just told me before we got on this episode that something you had posted on TikTok that we recently talked about got fucking banned.
Yep. And
So,
I even appealed it with documentation of our sources and everything. Nope, still banned.
yeah, it's crazy. But election interference and the Trump interview aside, I don't know about you, but I swear to God, every article that came across my feed this weekend was about which celebrities are endorsing Kamala. And I must have seen like 10, 20 articles about Beyonce and how she took the stage with her in Houston on Friday. And she was endorsing her not as a celebrity, but as a mother who wants her children to have the freedom to control their bodies. And I am so fucking sick of this narrative about women's rights being on the line if Trump gets elected. It is completely fucking false. And I'm sorry, but to say that you're not up there as a celebrity is also completely false and inauthentic because if Beyonce wasn't a celebrity with millions of followers, she wouldn't be speaking on stage with Kamala in the fucking first place.
Yeah. And I'm sick of this whole narrative too. It's like our daughters aren't going to have a choice about their bodies when they're drafted to go fight in these senseless, never ending wars. Like, why isn't anyone talking about that? No one's going to give a shit about their body then. And it's like, the story has been so twisted because when Roe v. Wade was overturned, it made it up to the states now, which means we get to vote on it. And this election, for the first time in my life, I get to vote on abortion. I've never been able to vote on it before, but guess what? It's on the ballot here in Florida. And like, shouldn't the Democratic Party want citizens to be able to use the democratic process to decide on abortion rather than leaving it up to federal judges? It's like they're so. They're so contradictory. It's like this is the closest this topic has been to the people in history. And they had what, 50 years to like codify it into law and they didn't. But anyways, like speaking of Beyonce, I guess she only gave like a 3-minute speech, which was like off a teleprompter. And then she walked off stage and didn't sing. And the crowd was pissed because they were all told she's going to perform at Kamala's event because, of course, that's the only way they can fill up a stadium for Kamala. And so clearly, like, they went there to see Beyonce perform because now there's like all these viral clips going around social media showing Beyonce exiting the stage and Kamala coming out, and the crowd started booing and chanting Donald Trump. And then, like, when you look at the camera angle from what Kamala was seeing, they were all leaving. The stadium was like emptying out once they realized, yeah, Beyonce's not going to sing. And so it's like, I want to compare that with Elon Musk's speech at Madison Square Garden, where he talked directly to the people from the heart. So listen to what he had to say.
Tax, all government spending is taxation. So whether it's direct taxation or all government spending, it's either becomes inflation or it's direct taxation. Your money is being wasted, and the Department of Government Efficiency is going to fix that. We're going to get the government off your back. Does not know it's going to be great. It's going to reach heights that it has never seen before. The future is going to be amazing.
Okay, so when it cut out, that was the crowd like roaring. Everyone was going wild. The energy was fucking insane. It's like, and for me, the reason I wanted to play that clip, and you kind of have to watch it yourself to see the audience, but like that spoke directly to me as an American citizen that is fed up with government spending that's screwing the people and destroying our country. He is telling me a specific problem that he will personally fix. And so I wanted to play that because you compare that with Beyonce's speech, which left me literally feeling nothing but annoyed. And like the difference is this: Elon Musk and Trump and JD Vance and their whole unity party, they go out and they talk about what they're going to do for us and how they're going to make our lives better. They're going to make America great again. They're going to make it healthy again. And they give specific examples of what they're going to do to make our lives better. But then with Kamala, you have her elite buddies like Oprah and Beyonce that tell us, they talk to us and say, you should vote for Kamala, but they give no valid facts or policy. They don't tell us how or why it's going to benefit us. They just think we should listen to them because they said so, because they're rich and famous. And that's the shit that people are fed up with. And that's why, like, I will listen to Elon Musk, even though he is an elite billionaire, and feel super energized. But listening to Beyonce, all I feel is annoyed and disgusted. It's like, why should I fucking listen to you?
Yeah, I totally agree. And like, here's another one. Another celebrity who publicly endorsed Kamala over the weekend was Leonardo DiCaprio. And he posted this video on Friday talking about how fucking Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton were unnatural disasters caused by climate change. And Kamala is the bold step forward that we need to achieve net zero emissions in order to save our economy and the planet and ourselves.
What a fucking joke. Like,
Mhm.
of all the things he can comment on, it's the hurricanes that Kamala did a piss poor job of addressing. And so on that post, he's now turned off his comments on Instagram because he was getting so much hate. And in the following post, the first comment like sums it up beautifully. It says, quote, way to turn off your comments in your endorsing post. Mr. Mega Yacht Private Jet Fleet rules for thee, but not me. Sorry, I don't know why I like just zoned out as I was saying that quote. Um, but I thought like it's exactly what I was thinking. And there were like thousands of comments all saying the same thing. And it's spot on because here he is, like Mr. Climate Justice, yet he has a private yacht and jet that gives off more emissions than the rest of us put together. You know, it's just so ridiculous. And again, it's like this is the shit that people are sick and tired of hearing about. No one wants to hear the arrogant elitists telling us what to do when they turn around and do whatever the hell they want. And like it really sucks too, because I always liked his movies and I liked him as an actor. And I feel like now I'm just disgusted and I just can't look at him the same again.
I know. I feel that way about so many celebrities now. And like him in particular, I had such a huge crush on him when Romeo and Juliet came
Mhm.
out. I mean, that was
Oh,
like,
me
I don't
too.
know, 90s, but like, oh my God, I loved that movie. And I could have watched him in a loop, just in that
I
movie.
did.
And
I
I,
like
you could
memorized the whole movie, which helped me in my English class, by the way.
Yeah, I actually had like both soundtracks. I had the
Yeah, me
like the
too.
instrumental soundtrack and then the one with all the like artist songs. And he's done so many great movies, but I am so sick of the hypocritical bullshit with these elite celebrities that like I can't stomach it anymore.
Yeah. Well, and then the other big one was last week, Eminem endorsed Kamala. And
Yeah.
his whole Instagram feed is like, it's bad. People are really hating on him because they're calling him a sellout and they're saying how, like, everything he's ever rapped about, this goes against that. Like, everything he stood for, he's now reversing by endorsing Kamala. And so people are just not taking well to these celebrity endorsements for her. And you would think her campaign would have like learned by now that maybe this isn't a winning strategy. But no, they keep pulling out these celebrity endorsements. So clearly they're not getting the memo. Like it's not working.
No, because like what? There's already been backlash from the Taylor Swift endorsement, the whole George Clooney thing, the like horrible staged Oprah interview, Meryl Streep's ridiculous performance during the Oprah interview. Like, I don't know how many more. Like, there's so many celebrities that have done these basically fake, insincere endorsements for Kamala.
Yeah. Okay. So you have to listen to this clip. It's from Trump's Madison Square Garden rally in New York, where it's comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, and he like nails it spot on. I'm just gonna play it. It's a short one.
The other side got a lot of crazy endorsements. Swift, Eminem, Leo DiCaprio, Beyonce. Every day the Democratic Party looks more and more like a P. Diddy party.
So again, like the crowd went wild and it was exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, these are like everyone that was on like the Diddy lists that are showing up at these like Diddy parties, you would think they'd get the clip like, maybe we shouldn't be like highlighting them right now? But speaking of that, I don't want to get too derailed, but I have to tell you on TikTok, there's this like whole conspiracy theory about I cannot talk today. Beyonce and Oprah being like the madams of like the Diddy's sex trafficking operation, kind of like how Ghislaine Maxwell was the madam for Epstein. And so like it's funny, right? But what's makes me think like, well, maybe it's true is that it's gotten to the point where all of these different TikTok influencers are saying that they're receiving cease and desist letters, that they can't talk about it anymore, which makes me think like, hmm, why are they going to such great lengths to like quell this, theory that's out there? I thought that was interesting. And so it's like when I heard this comedian talking about the Democrat Party becoming a Diddy party, it's like, I think that's what the masses are seeing when they see these music industry elites endorsing Kamala, you know?
Yeah, while you were talking, I was like, oh my God, we should totally do an episode about this. And then you mentioned the cease and desist letters, and I'm like, we're already fucking banned. So, like, does it even matter at this point?
I know.
But I was listening to like Megyn Kelly did an interview with James Woods over the weekend, and he's a Trump supporter. And so I was thinking, like, all we ever hear about for the most part is like all the celebrities endorsing Kamala, right? And so I'm like, who's endorsing Trump? And it got me thinking, like, how many celebrities are even conservative to begin with? Because I mean, mostly what we hear about from the MSM is the libtards on the left. And I found this website called ranker.com, and it listed over 140 famous Republican actors. And the list was current as of a couple days ago. And, some of them are dead, like actors from, 50 years ago. But I was surprised by some of the answers because the list included Adam Sandler, Vince Vaughn, Kurt Russell, Jessica Simpson, Heather Locklear, Dean Cain, Tom Selleck, Randy Quaid, Antonio Sabato Jr., Joe Pesci, Scott Baio, Tim Allen, like all these people. But then I noticed like most of them are older, right? I didn't really see how many younger celebrities on the list. And again, I don't know if any of these celebrities are outright endorsing Trump, but they're definitely on the conservative side. But we know for sure that Elon Musk, Kid Rock, Mel Gibson, Russell Brand, Jim Caviezel, Jason Aldean, Amber Rose, Kanye West, Roseanne Barr, Rob Schneider, Dana White, James Woods, Dennis Quaid, Danica Patrick, Victoria Jackson, Kelsey Grammer, Hulk Hogan, they've all publicly endorsed Trump. And of course, Tucker Carlson, all the conservative podcast hosts, RFK Jr., but like I'm not counting them as Hollywood actors and celebrities. But the reason I'm bringing any of this up and rattling off all these names is because I was just pleasantly surprised to see that not all of Hollywood is totally leftist, like the MSM would like us to believe. And it gave me some hope for our future.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned Adam Sandler and Rob Schneider, and I actually went to their show here in Tampa, and this was like not when it was cool to support Trump. Like this was still, a couple years ago. And they were very like pro Trump. Their whole thing was like pretty much making fun of like woke Hollywood. And that really surprised me. I mean, they were just putting it out there and I really respected them for that. But like even more significant than these celebrities is the fact that Trump just received the endorsement from highly respected leaders in the Arab and Muslim communities at a recent rally in Michigan. So I'm going to play a clip of the message that they're sending to their community that they talked about at the rally.
We as Muslims stand with President Trump because he promises peace. He promises peace, not war. The bloodshed has to stop all over the world. And I think this man can make that happen. I personally believe that God saved his life twice for a reason. We support Donald J. Trump for his commitment to promoting family values. and protected our children well-being, especially when it comes to curriculums and school. We as Muslims support this man because we believe that he will be a president for all Americans, embracing every race, color, and religion. We are President Trump because we want a strong people.
Did you
It
hear
was
like any of it?
it was clear in the beginning and then it just got kind of garbled. Maybe
It's
it's
so
just on my
hard. There's
end.
so many clips I always want to play, but there's always screaming in the background because people are
Yeah.
like so energized by it. And it was at a rally and it was very loud. But I mean, this is huge because this is a group that has historically voted Democrat. And so it's a big deal. And it's a huge voter base for the Democrat Party that's flipping. So after this speech, people have been posting videos in New York City where I guess there's lines. I'm assuming it's like blocks and blocks because people just keep walking and walking. The line keeps going and going of people like waiting to vote. And so they've been going up to Arab people throughout these lines and asking them who they're voting for. And they're all saying they're voting for Trump because they believe that he will end the war. Which, like, how much did I call this at the DNC when they were protesting? I was like, if he gets that voter base, like, they're done. They're done.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like millions of people across the country. And like, just think about how many Muslims and pro-Palestinians that we saw at these protests across the country, like when the war first broke out. And so just think like if these respected leaders are telling their groups to vote for Trump, like I would imagine they're going to get a huge turnout for him. And that could completely change the game. I mean, this is not a small group of people. And I mentioned earlier that Trump did the Madison Square Garden sold out event, by the way. Like it was packed with 20,000 people, but beyond that, there were thousands and thousands of people filling up the bars nearby to watch it. You look at photos, the streets were filled with people in MAGA gear. Starting at like 1 in the morning, 6:30 a.m., I saw just lines of people. I mean, you've never seen anything like it. It's insane. And all these New Yorkers are going on there on TikTok saying they've been in New York their entire life and they've never seen anything quite like it, and how this never would have gone over even just 4 years ago. And so it's really showing how much of a shift there's been recently towards Trump. And he keeps making that comment like, we got to be too big to rig. And I think Madison Square Garden in blue New York City proved that he is. And with that being said, Elon Musk told everyone, you got to get out and vote early. Go now and vote. And I know you and I have talked about this. Like, should we or shouldn't we? They're saying absolutely do it because they're going to be posting a scorecard state by state with the goal being that the margin of victory is just like so big that he says like you quote you know what won't happen. So they're trying to avoid that 2 a.m. Flood of ballots, hoping that before election day there's just going to be such a big margin they're not going to get away with cheating the election again.
Yeah, I saw that with that Madison Square Garden event that they actually had to turn people away because it
Yeah.
was so fucking crowded. So,
Mhm.
I mean, I hope maybe this whole early voting thing is a good strategy. I really hope so. I'm against early voting, but maybe we need it. I don't know. But you know how you always have like a fun clip for the end of the podcast? So
Yeah.
I have one for today. And Kamala was in Pennsylvania on Sunday. And you know how she has like a new accent every time she goes somewhere trying to appeal to a voter base?
Yeah.
Well, now she has a church accent. So I want to play this clip. It was an event where she was speaking before a church congregation. So let's take a listen. Oh, shit. I hate when. Sorry.
It has to play an ad or something.
Yeah, here we go.
He is going to carry us forward, and the road ahead won't be easy. It will require perseverance and hard work. But in times of uncertainty, scripture reminds us weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. The path may seem hard, the work may seem heavy, but joy cometh in the morning, and church morning is on its way.
I hope were you able to hear that because it was one
It
of those
cut out a
clips where they
lot, but like
okay. That
you
was the
could get the gist
crowd.
of it.
Yeah, that was
Like,
the crowd. Like, my God.
why are her people not telling her? Like, you can't keep doing the accents. What are you doing? Like, why
Yeah,
is she not listening?
she's a preacher now. So
It's so bad. Like, it's just so freaking bad.
I
And
know.
again, like, I don't know how she could possibly win unless they cheat. So hopefully they won't. Hopefully they'll be too big to rig. But we'll we'll keep everyone posted on what's going on with this election and everything else happening in the world. So I hope everyone has a great start to the week, and we'll see you back here on Wednesday.